Hi, this is Mick. Welcome back to my channel. Not posted in a while. Been too busy doing jobs. What I'm going to be doing today is replacing the rear brakes. That's calipers, discs and pads on a 2016 Volkswagen Polo. It's a petrol 1.2 TSI. So let's crack on with it and see where we go. Right, this is a car in question. It's got 71,000 on clock and rear brakes have never really been touched. I had a look at caliper once on driver's side because it's squealing a bit, but they do tend to seize up a bit on driver's side, don't know why. Anyway, this is a car in question. It's just show you the back end of it. It's a 1.2 TSI Blue Motion 2016. So what I'll do first of all, I'll get it jacked up, get it on axle stands, take wheels off, and I'll come back to you shortly. Right, we've got rear car jacked up, wheels are off, it's on axle stands, one at each side, and I've also left it on dolly jack under that cross member just for extra safety. Always make sure once you've jacked it up before you start any work that you chock one at front wheels, a couple of chocks, one at back and one at front there, so it's not going to rock around and fall off at axle stands. Right, so first thing I'll do before we start taking brakes apart is go under the bonnet, take lid off at master cylinder and put some cellophane, or I'll just use a latex glove, put it up at top like that, screw lid back on tight, and then that's it. Look, bit of cellophane, anything like that. Make sure when you've done it you remove it obviously, but that'll minimise fluid loss when we disconnect the brake hose on back. So right, let's just have a quick look at what we've got. I'll just do one side on this video. It's quite straightforward, exactly the same procedure on both sides. So these have never been changed. I did have a look at this caliper once because it was squealing and I had to turn it a few times either way, wind it back, etc, and grease all slider pins up, but it's still a bit too stiff. So I'm going to replace both calipers, both discs, and both sets of pads on each side. So it is a bit worn, this disc now. It's got a nice lip on it there, a bit groved, so it's ready for changing. And disc pads, if you can see down there, they're about halfway down, so they're ready for changing. So what we'll be doing first, we'll be clamping this brake hose off with a special hose clamp to minimise fluid loss. We'll be disconnecting brake hose on that bolt there, and then we'll be releasing handbrake. I'll show you how to do that before we start any work. Okay, back in a minute. Just one tip for you, I forgot to mention, when you're taking wheels off, they might be really hard to get off. They need freeing up, so you're going to have to tap them front back. I use a wooden mallet or a plastic hammer. Reason being, I don't want to damage wheel rim itself. So if you're using a metal hammer, that's all you've got. Just use a little block of wood in front of it, just so you don't cause any damage to the wheel. Give it a few taps, spin it a bit, give it a few more taps, and it should just fall off. Okay. Right, back again. What we need to do first is release handbrake cable. So if we go behind here, you see handbrake cable just here. Well, the end of it here, this ball needs to come out of that slot there. So to do that, there's a little securing bolt there for this mechanism. So put a 13mm socket on that, turn it clockwise. Let's just have a look if I can do this one-handed. Turn it clockwise like that, and then if you push on that, then the end of the cable, it should come out of that slot and you can release it. Right, that's done. So I've just turned that bolt clockwise just a little bit, just enough to push this cable out of that slot, and then just pull it out that way. So next thing we need to do then is we need to put an hose clamp on that brake hose, somewhere around about here in the middle where it's most flexible. So this is one I use, just a few quid from Machine Mart a few years ago. Just take it out of the pack. All you do is open it up like that, push this fully to the forefront, open it up, put it on hose like that, squeeze it and pull that back at the same time over all them notches. That's nice and tight, that'll minimise fluid loss. And then what you need to do then is using an 11mm socket or 11mm spanner, undo this securing bolt for the brake union and take that off. Put something under the car on the floor, some rag or something, because you will get a few drips of brake fluid coming out. I'll come back to you shortly then once I've done that. Right, I've clamped the hose up onto the shocker with a zip tie or tie wrap, just to keep it out that way and minimise any loss of brake fluid. Only a few drops came out only. I've put a bowl underneath here just to catch anything. It'll catch all rubbish that comes off at caliper anyway, all bits of rust and what have you. So now that's up and out that way, it's disconnected off at caliper there. So the next job we need to do, just get back under, right, back onto your handbrake cable. This bracket all gets replaced with new one. It's on new caliper. So you need to take the handbrake cable out of this bracket. It comes through a hole in this plate here, and to get the cable out, you'd probably see there's two little plastic tabs. Oops, just there, one there and one on the other side. If you get some long nose pliers, squeeze them tabs in, and then cable should just pull straight out that way. Just pull out. So get some long nose pliers on them two tabs, and then take cable out. And then once you've done that, you can then take caliper off. So if you undo the top bolt there, which is 13mm, and bottom one there 13mm, you can pull the caliper off then, and that's how that way. So we'll get on with that. I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, I've disconnected the handbrake cable out of that bracket now. You can see what I've done. This is cable, it just comes out of that hole there. So like I said, squeeze them two tabs in, there's one at each side on here, and then just pull it out through there. So right, I'll be going on with removing caliper now. Just them two bolts, top one up there, bottom one 13mm, and I'll get that off. Right, we've got caliper off from disc pads. They're all in that bowl there, so we'll compare them to new ones later, just to see how much wear we've had. So next thing we need to get off before we can get the disc off is this caliper retaining bracket. Now, looking from experience, these are very, very hard to get off. So if you go around back, if you can see that, we've got a bolt there, and we've got one just there. You can just see them on the picture. Now these come off with an 8mm Allen key, and I know that they're going to be extremely difficult to get off. So you can try using an Allen key and see if they'll free off. Don't be tempted to start using an hammer on your Allen key, because you'll just you'll either end up having an accident or you'll round off inside that bolt. So you need to use an 1/2" drive socket with a built-on Allen key. So it's 8mm. So I'll battle with that and I'll come back to you shortly. Right, I've managed to get this brake caliper mounting bracket off. Now that was an absolute nightmare. These are bolts that came out. As you can see, they're Allen bolts, 8mm. They would not shift. So I've soaked them in WD-40. I've used an impact wrench, which I've got here. Use this impact wrench, and also I've got a 1 metre breaker bar there, which I couldn't really get in properly. So I've used my torque wrench on reverse, and just managed to get enough leverage to loosen them. But I've still had to use an impact wrench to get them out, so that tight. So don't use any heat on it, blowtorch or anything, because you'll most likely damage brake hose and wiring. So anyway, that's off. Very difficult. So just be patient, take your time, and don't break your knuckles. So next job then is to get the disc off the rotor. There's a little Torx bit there. I think that's a Torx 30, but we'll have a look. So you remove that little bolt, and then this should come off. You might just have to give it a little bit of a tap and spin it, just to loosen it, and then that should come off. So I'll get that sorted, and then we can look at comparing the old and the new. Cheers. Okay, I've got disc off. It is a T30 Torx, so straightforward, loosens up quite easy, and this disc just fell off, which is great. So what I'll do is I'll line them all up on drive, the old stuff what I've took off against new stuff, and let's compare them. 2 new calipers, 2 new discs for each side, and a full set of pads which covers each side. Altogether that were 276 quid, but when you take your old calipers back, you get 70 quid back, £35 for each one. So altogether 206 quid, not a bad price. Anyway, so that's new caliper, all nice and shiny, nice and clean piston, look, rubber seal. So that's that. It's all Padgett stuff that I get. I've always got Padgett, so I just trust it, that's all. So this is a new disc. Absolutely no grooves on it or anything like that. You compare that to the old one, you can see grooves. You can see grooves and lip on it. So it's got 70 odd thousand on clock now, this Polo, so ready for changing. And then disc pads, these are new ones. Look at that, look at the amount of friction material you've got on there compared to this old one, which is right down, probably about half. I'll just put them together and see what difference is. Yeah, look at that, must be 70% worn at least, so they're ready for changing anyway. So with these brake pads you also get a set of bolts. There's 4 bolts, two for each side, and they're actually the caliper retaining bolts, not the mounting bracket bolts. These are actually the caliper ones. So that's that. That's all the kit you've got. So what we'll do next, I'll show you what we do next. Back down to here. Just use some brake cleaner or some other solvent. Just give this a spray, clean it all up, give this a bit of a clean up, probably a little brass wire brush or something around there just to get rid of this all this muck and what have you. We can grease that up with copper grease before we put wheel back on, so that'll make that easier to get off in the long run. So right, I'll give this a good clean up then, and then we'll look at reversal of the removal and start putting it all back together. So I'll get this cleaned up, come back to you in a bit. Okay, that's all that all cleaned up. Just use some of this brake cleaner spray and a rag, just spray it on and wipe it with rag straight away just to get muck off, and it evaporates quite quick, so that's fair dues. I used a brass wire brush, just a little brass one, so you don't cause any damage, and just cleaned round cleaned all this plate up around here where the wheel sits. So like I said, we'll put a bit of grease on that before we put it back together. So regarding the caliper mounting bracket, before we put this back on, I'm going to give it a clean up with wire brush, but before I do that, I'm going to take these slider pins out. These are a little caliper to slide side to side when you're braking. Just take these out, clean rubbers up, bit of brake clean will do it. Clean these up, try and poke a bit of rag inside and get all old grease out, then just put a little bit of silicone grease back on them. Important thing is when they're in, that they move nice and free like that and twist, no resistance whatsoever, and then they'll do the job. So if you do get a little bit of resistance on them when you take them out, they're a bit seized up, just put them in a vise and get a little bit of sandpaper on them and just give them a good clean up, try and get rid of corrosion. Failing that, you can buy some new pins, but make sure you put a bit of silicone grease back on them. So that's what I'll do next. I'll give this bracket a clean up, give these a clean up, pop them back in, and then we'll look at getting this mounted and finished. Okay, right, that's my next job. Right, we've got this arm all finished and completed now. It's all cleaned down. Make sure you pay particular attention to these edges just here, because that's where your brake pads are going to sit on and slide along. So that's that. These slider pins I've put back in, a bit of silicone grease, nice and free. So that's ready to go back on. So I'll use them original bolts that came off, and I've put a bit of Molykote grease on them, just so they don't seize up as bad as what they were. So next job we need to do is put new disc on. So before I put new disc on, I'll give it a spray with brake cleaner, just in case there's any protective oil on it from when it was manufactured, just to clean it up. We'll put the disc on, and then we can look at putting that mounting bracket back on. So when I put disc on, I'll come back to you. Cheers. Right, that's new disc on, all cleaned up. Make sure you use gloves or have your hands clean before you handle that disc, just so you don't get any grease or oil on it or any other crap. So next job then is to get this caliper mounting bracket back on, and then we'll look at the caliper itself. Right, we've got caliper mounted just on that bottom bolt there. So as you can see, if you put a 13mm socket on that bolt, your new one, put a 15mm open-ended spanner on this one to hold it, and then just tighten that one. I just do it hand tight, you know, firm but hand tight. I don't want to go and over torque it. So that's the bottom one on. So caliper, once we've put the pads in, that will lift up, go around pads, and you'll bolt this top section in. So you can see the slider pin, nice and free, so that gives it a bit of play. So next job what I'm going to do is put some of this copper grease, just a tiny bit, on these faces here. These are where your pads will sit, and where they'll move side to side like that when the piston comes out when you press your brakes. So just a very, very slight coating on there, and again same at top on them two sides. So I use, rather than do it on my finger and get it plastered everywhere, just use a cotton bud, and you can get a little bit of precision without getting it all over the edge of the disc and everything. So try not to be tempted to use your finger, because you'll get it all over the place, but it only needs a tiny bit. So I'll just do that now while I can hold camera. Just a tiny bit like that, bit of copper grease, and then just dab it on there, and a little bit more onto the top there. Don't go too near your disc, just keep it there like that. So what I'll do is I'll do all 4 of them edges, then we'll put the pads in, When we put pads in, these are new ones, so literally just slot in there like that against the disc like that. So these little sticky pads here, these 3M sticky pads, just peel that off. Everyone, all your disc pads are exactly the same, by the way, so it doesn't matter which way you put them. Peel that little bit of paper off, they're tacky. Then once you press your brakes for the first time, this will stick to this arm here, and then the other one will have a bit of adhesion on that piston, so it stops your pads rattling around and squealing, hopefully. So right, I'll get these copper greased up, get these pads in, lift the caliper up into position, and get that top mounting bolt fixed, fastened in. So I'll come back to you when that's done. Okay, before I reposition caliper into its final position, just to show you what I've done here with pads, I've peeled them bits of paper off so you got your sticky side, slotted them in into the caliper mounting bracket. There's a little bit of copper grease on, just a tiny bit on each side, just so that it allows these pads to move laterally when you press brakes. So I'll get this caliper lifted up now, get it fastened on, and then we'll look at getting the hose connected back up and the handbrake. Okay, caliper's in position now, new pads are in. So as you can see with slider pins, there's plenty of play in it, it slides on them pins. So when the reason you have to hold a 15mm span on there, just hold it still, is so that when you tighten in that, it doesn't twist the slider pin and twist that rubber, because if that rubber splits you're going to have to get a new kit, because obviously you get muck going in the dirt. So that's all you do, 15mm span around there just to hold it still while you tighten that one. Right, that's done. So we've got new disc, new caliper and new pads, all fully fitted. Handbrake's all connected back up, brake hose is all connected back up. I'll just do that hand tight and then just give it just a little nip with an 11mm socket, and that's it. Clamps removed from us, everything's wiped down and cleaned up, so there's no bits of brake fluid underneath or anything. Just make sure you wipe everything and keep everything away from that disc, any dirty cloths or rags or anything, and your fingers. So that's it. All that remains now is to bleed the brakes. Once I've done the other side, then replace road wheels. So I'm not going to film the bleeding of the brakes. There's plenty of videos on YouTube how to do it, mainly because of time, and second thing, I've got to hold this camera at the same time. So I hope this video has been of use. Oh yeah, like I say, this is how I do it. Everybody's got their own different ways and what have you, different tools they use and different methods. But like I say, it's just to guide us out, as you know, as to how I do it. I hope it helps you out. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and a like and subscribe. I appreciate it. And see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.